You wanted the best. You've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks. It's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com, thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the Chris Voss Show, folks. My family and friends, the great family of the Chris Voss Show podcast, the podcast that loves you but doesn't judge you, at least not as harshly as your mother-in-law, because you didn't get your wife, you forgot her anniversary, and she'll never let you live it down. That's a good one. Just came up with. So, guys, as always, we certainly appreciate the 5-star reviews you give us over there in the iTunes. I just love you guys so much. One of the recent posts was, what I love about this podcast is the host. Chris is able to bring out the best out of the guest to provide optimal benefit to the listener. This is the reason his podcast is rated so highly. It is. And there's no better than Chris Voss. And nothing screams my egotistical narcissism to be set off than writing reviews like that. So thank you very much for whoever wrote that. And I'll just put that up on my wall and frame it. In fact, maybe we should just put reviews behind us and frame them. So anyway, if you guys haven't gotten a chance, please support the show. For the love of God, please support the show. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, youtube.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss. Make sure you subscribe to that LinkedIn newsletter. That thing grows by like 50 to 100 people a day, and we've been doing it for a couple of years now, I think. It's crazy. It's insane the way it grows. And I'm just like, holy crap, who keeps subscribing to this thing? I didn't know there's many users on LinkedIn, but I guess there are. Anyway, guys, also, was it TikTok or Chris Voss One? We're going to be talking spycraft today, and spycraft on how you can use the tools and techniques of spies, or spooks sometimes as they're called in the business, and how you can learn that to analyze people, to understand people better, to evaluate people, and also use that for business, and how you can do business deals, negotiations, how to get maybe more out of your teammates, because if they don't do what you want, you have the black helicopters pick them up and ship them off to Poland in some dungeon thing, and then you strap on the battery packs and the jumper cables. Anyway, because we've all want to do that to Bob in the office because he can't work the paper copier right, but that's another story. We'll see if we can get our current guests to do that. Today we have an amazing gentleman on the show, JJ Brun. I'm going to try and make a stab at that. He is known and basically trademarked as the retired spy, and you're going to learn a lot about his stuff. He's operative 130 or 431. We'll find out what that means. As a seasoned veteran of the intelligence branch of the Canadian Armed Forces, he served with distinction as a contract handler on the ground in Bosnia and Herzegovina. He spent years in the discrete world of the human intelligence and counter-human intelligence, having driven his desire to understand humans' behavior, intricacies, and pass on the complex notion of interpersonal communication. He's retired from active duty now, and he realized that much of what he learned could be utilized in the civilian world, based on the 4-temperament DISC model of human behavior to better understand maximize human dynamics, and his exclusive training programs provide a comprehensive analysis of communication techniques, empowering individuals to enhance authentic relationships, promote trust, innovation, and productivity, or sends them to the shadow realm. Welcome to the show, JJ. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you.
There you go. It's excellent to have you. I'm losing my voice. Go ahead and give me your full name. I think we set up in your .coms, wherever people can find you on the interwebs.
So the full name is, it's French. So the full name is Jean-Jacques Joseph Brun, and I go by JJ. When I was working overseas, they couldn't pronounce my name. So it then became John Jack. Hey, John Jack. And they would think they were bilingual. I was working at the safe house one day, and then there was a British colleague that came into the ops room, and he needed something on my desk. And he just said, "Hi, JJ." And I connected the dots. Jean-Jacques. Okay, JJ. And turned, and I answered, and I got branded.
There you go.
the story is, if you don't brand yourself, somebody else will. So for me, it worked out because it made it easier for everybody to remember my name. And it also, when I messed up overseas, Canada did not know who this JJ was because that was not my official name on paper. So it worked out. That was my
Now,
cover.
assuming that's your real name,
Yeah.
did we get your .com? I think we did. Did we?
It's as simple as theretiredspy.com. Everything is there, and it's in both official Canadian language, French and in English. So
There you go. So give me a 30,000 overview. Give us a summation of what you do and how you do it for your clients and the work that you're doing now.
Uh, bottom line for us is equipping people for works of service. So
Mhm.
when 20 years in the military, I specialize in the field of human intelligence, and I had to go to a war zone to learn how to build relationships.
Mhm.
But I was going to be evaluated by my ability to build relationships. And from there, I just saw the value of having a model of reference that quite often, whether it's in your business or in your personal life, if you do not have a model of reference, you will often find yourself at a disadvantage.
There you go.
So I got interested in temperaments, personalities, people's character, people's preferences. And from there, I was able to discover mine so that I can see others and then how to flex and adapt and then how to apply it with everybody else within an organization. So in the civilian side of things, as in, I said, you know what? After 20 years, it was time for me to pull the pin. But now I do more work for Canadian government, whether it's the federal, provincial, or the municipalities outside than when I was in uniform. And it's all
Mhm.
about providing them the resources for them to utilize a model of reference when interacting with people. So at the level that I'm at, I train their trainers. So as opposed to having me on site, I will go and train their cadre so that
Mhm.
they can start doing their own internal training inside their organization. So from law enforcement to the Canadian Revenue Agency to the Canada School of Public Service, I train their trainers. And then for them to apply the four temperament model, often referred to as just a disc model, into their specific areas of expertise or requirements that they have.
There you go. Canadian. Is Justin Trudeau as good looking, as ridiculously good looking as he seems in person as he seems on TV?
He is definitely taller. One time I bidded on a lunch at Parliament.
Mm,
So we're going to meet a senator. We're going to have lunch, and as he was not the prime minister at the time, so we were waiting to go and meet the senator. Justin Trudeau just passed by, and he is one tall gentleman. He's like,
really?
yeah, he doesn't look it on TV, but I think he's like 6'2", very thin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, definitely like double look. Whoa,
Yeah.
I didn't think he was that tall. So
Yeah.
he's taller than me. I'm 6, so I got a he got a double look from me. He goes, what?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
he's much bigger in person than he looks on TV.
There you go. So give us a story of yourself. How did you grow up? What was your hero's journey? What got you into the spy business or wanting to get into the spy business, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, for me, the military was an exit strategy. So I'm born and raised in a small village, entrepreneurial background. So my father, managed a gas station, a sawmill, and a chip harvester, where you would cut the trees down and turn it into wood chips and then sell it at the sawmill. So
Mhm.
the whole village lived off lumber. Lumber was sort of like the industry, and at a very young age, we just that's what we learned as in the entrepreneurial. But Dad always professed, get yourself a good, safe federal job, and so he always planted that seed because he had to, he would leave at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning and come back at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night.
Wow.
And then he didn't want that because my dad said, son, you've never been in business until you had a payroll because everybody, you have to pay somebody else first before you pay yourself.
That's true.
And he was struggling. And then he had big dreams. He wanted to accomplish a lot of things. because he came out of college to help his dad run the business, and he never got an opportunity to finish his college and his university. So he got stuck in that area. And I started at a very young age working at the gas station. My brother at a very young age working at the sawmill. And at one point, he wanted us to go to university, and I was wired to go to university. But I only had $5 a day for meals. Back
Wow.
then, it was like, it was in the 80s, mid 80s.
Yeah, I remember those
And
days. Yeah, the ramen days.
it was just tough. And my dad didn't have the money to pay for the tuition and everything. But one day I arrived at home and I had a nice, Laurentian University embroidered sweatshirt because I was a shot putter for the university. And so the pride, it wasn't the leather jacket, but a nice embroidered university sweatshirt. And my dad looked at that and said, "Where did you get that?" I says, "Well, I bought it." "Where did you buy that?" "At the university." "Who paid for that?" Like, I knew where we were going. I said, "Well, I did." "Where did you get your money?" "I worked this summer." "Where did you work this summer?" "At the garage." "Who owns the garage?" "You do." "So who paid for that?" And it's just that he was there's so much financial pressure. Like, my dad had visited the hospital on 2 or 3 occasions with ulcers because when the sawmill went on strike, the bank was still calling for the payments.
Oh,
So
wow.
you're too young. You don't know this.
Yeah.
But for me, it's okay, check mark. And 2 weeks after that, I found myself in basic training and joined the military. So the military for me was an exit strategy. I was I was tired of being told what to do, so I joined the
Yeah.
military, and that did not make any sense. And then after 3 days, people yelling at you, and and then you get shaved, and it's just a different culture because I had no formal training in any type of the cadets or the reserves or anything like that, and I just thought those people are crazy. And I called back home and I was talking to my mom. Say, "Hey, Mom, I'll make peace with Dad. I'll get a mentor, a tutor. I'm not going to lose my first year. I want to come back." And my dad was listening on the second line,
Oh.
and he said, "You've made your bed, son." And he hung up the phone.
Whoa.
Yeah. So at the age of 19, best thing ever.
Wow.
Now, back then, it
Yeah.
was like crap, uh, because there's no guarantee you're going to pass boot camp. It's
Yeah.
like we're 40 and they only need 20 of us. So
Wow.
look on the left, look on your right. One of you is not going to be here at the end. So,
Wow.
and for me, it's like failing was not an option. I absolutely had to pass that training. So fast forward, a very successful career because my first session was with the combat arms. So that's the French regiment, would be Le Royal 22e Régiment, so the Royal 22nd Regiment. The Vendus, often they would be referred to as the Vendus. And what takes you 8 years to accomplish, I did it in less than 4 years.
Very
Blessing
good.
and a curse, because you're the new type of soldier. You're bilingual, you're computer literate, you got a good physique. So you're the new generation, but the old guard doesn't like you because you haven't suffered like they've
Ah.
suffered. So after a while, as in, well, I'm tired of this internal fighting, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to switch career, switch lane, and that's what got me interested in the intelligence branch. Applied, got recommended, and then moved, and again, a rapid progression within that industry. So I was able to do 2 things. As in, I started within the non-commissioned officer, and then I finished as a staff officer. So I've done the blue collar and the white collar. So a total of 20 years in the military, 15. Uh, uh, yeah, 15 years was really in uniform, and then or the non-commissioned, and then the last 5 as a staff officer, specializing in the field of human intelligence. And that's how I got interested in that whole area. And back then in the military, my claim to fame is being the first one selected for the role of a contact handler. Contact handler back then was sent into a hostile environment. So for me, my timeline was Bosnia, the war in Bosnia, where a contact handler is sent to a hostile environment where he or she has to cultivate sources, build relationships by design, determine their intentions, and modify their behaviors without the use of any Jedi mind tricks. Basically, get them to be an informant, get them to share what they've seen and what they've observed on the field. And at the end, I had 100 eyeballs working on our behalf all across, so that then we could advise our commanding officer what was happening on the terrain, so that they can make an informed decision as to where to put the resources in Bosnia at that time. So, being the first Canadian in a multinational, we had anywhere from 5 to 7 different nationalities.
Wow.
English was the working language. Now, I speak 3 languages. In Europe, quite often they'll speak 5, if not more. English will be their 5th or their 6th language. So it was quite interesting in regards to, did you understand what I meant for you to understand? Even our commanding officer, I'm not going to mention his name, but he had one of these thick British accent, and he had this town hall meeting where he got all the contact handlers, like this, talking about a very good target of all the operatives were all in one area. We could have gotten taken out right there. And he does his presentation, cast out his vision for the tour, what's going to happen. But at the end, he finishes with his big British accent. I know you think you understand what I just said, but I'm not really sure. But what you understand is what I meant for you to understand, laddies. Do you understand? And I was looking on the left and then the right, and I'm like, wow, that's going to be a long 6 months.
Was that Sean Connery?
Well, it was thick. Well, for anyone from the UK, they're just going to crucify me because it was a bad imitation of it. But at the end, did you understand what I meant for you to understand? And communication is so simple. It's just not easy.
Yeah.
That you have to realize that when communication breaks down, blame the process, not the person. They may not have understood what you were trying to communicate to them. And that's the whole area of learning to say the same thing in a different way, of decoding one's preferred communication style, so that you're able to they're able to receive your offer versus resist your offer in building those relationships and getting them to share their secrets.
And being a handler is a dangerous business, right? I mean, right? You can be exposed, or
it's
you end up in their gulag.
Today, Chris, it's different today. Like I have 2 operational tours. I have a peacekeeping in Cyprus underneath my belt, and I have peacemaking in Bosnia. From that transition, we left Bosnia to go to Afghanistan. So the role of a contact handler in Afghanistan is completely different, because you need even more resources. You need cover teams to go with you when you're moving. So it's quite different because of the environment's change. And as the environment changes, you also have to adapt the role of a contact handler. So I had it pretty easy or safe compared to the teams in Afghanistan, because that terrain was more aggressive, more labor intensive. It's just rugged terrain. The danger was much, much higher in Afghanistan than it was manageable in Bosnia, where we lived. We had a safe house, but then again, it wasn't that safe, because it's a villa, and it's not even fenced in, and you've got all these military vehicles, green targets, and all these people dressed in green telling people, here are the targets. So we were not allowed to be out of uniform. So it was part of the Dayton Agreement. Like your weapon has to be, can't have a concealed weapon on you. You have to show your weapon. So your pistol or your long rifle, you're dressed in green, you have a role, and it was different. I could go out 2-man team. Sometimes we needed 2 vehicles, so a 4-man team to go out when it was hostile. But you were able to get around with a 2-man team to the meets, to the location that you needed to, like when we had to connect with that, the self-declared, well, we branded him as a self-declared mayor of Mostar. So Mostar is where I played. So if you know where Sarajevo is, you just have to go south, and there's a place called Mostar. Translated, that means bridge. and that river, the Red River had like 4 or 5 bridges across it. Very strategic town
Hmm.
because you get access to the ocean if you can control that city. You can then have access to Dubrovnik all the way
Hmm.
down there on the coast.
There you
So,
go.
but it's we're working with the Serbs, the Croats, and the Muslims, the main 3 ethnicities that were there, and you have to build relationships with the Serbs, the Croats, and the Muslims, and it's different culturally how
Definitely.
you
Definitely.
communicate. However, everybody wants to talk all the time. You just have to find their hot button.
Ah,
Yeah,
how to
and if
get
you,
them to talk.
it's it's the art of listening. For me, what really saved me is that I learned the 10 most effective feel good ice breaking questions. I was sold on the
Oh, really?
process. Yeah, that if you could memorize these 10 most effective feel good ice breaking questions, you will always be able to carry conversation with anyone, anywhere, anytime. As soon as I heard about that, I'm like, give me the questions. I'm not a people person. I'm very
Okay.
task oriented. I got that. I'm more dominant, direct, demanding in everything that I do. Cautious, calculating, conscientious. Yes, but I'm going to be evaluated by my ability to build relationships with people. I'm like, that'd be a great business if it wasn't for the people.
Well, there you go. So let's talk about how this translates into what you do now and utilize it to teach others some of the trade craft or spy craft sort of techniques and tools. You do different things. There's something you have called the disc.
Mhm.
And I guess you're speaking now, you're teaching now, and you've got some different materials people can sign up for on your website. Talk about what the disc thing is. You have some stuff on here for disc assessments, certification, training events, things you do about disc.
So it's a model. I'm a big advocate. I don't give a rip which one you choose to use. Just use one
Hmm. Mm.
because they will make a difference in business or in your personal life because you have a model of reference. I chose that one because it was the easiest one to understand, easiest one to learn, easiest one to teach others. So it's based on Marston. It's the 4 temperament model of human behavior. One model is not better than the other. They're just different models. Just find one that works for you. There's over 100 different models out there to better understand the tendencies or better understand people. Enneagram, Strength Finder, the Neo, the MMPI, Bank Code. There's just so many out there. Myers Briggs. A lot of people understand Myers Briggs. 360 degrees. Pick one, master it, put in the time and the effort and all. So I've accumulated over 30,000 hours in the 4 temperament model of human behavior, studying, teaching, and certifying people within that tool. So everything that I do has a behavioral based approach. So if I'm working with a coach, I'm going to get them accredited and certified in utilizing that tool. And now they can do coaching as a behavioral based coaching approach. Or you're going to do some onboarding within your staff you want to hire. Okay, well, let's do role assessments to find the temperament styles that you're looking for so that you can
Ah,
market based to the temperament style that you're looking for. So then when
ah.
you hire, now you can have a behavioral based onboarding training program so that you retain them longer because in 90 days I think 30% of new hires after 90 days are looking for an exit strategy. So
Wow.
by having a behavioral based approach to onboarding, to marketing, to presenting your products, quite often people put a lot of information in the written format. Great, that's 1/3 general population. 2/3 of your audience are more people oriented
Mhm.
based on the research. Therefore, you need both a written format and you need the video of you reading the written format.
Mhm.
It's a different type of industries, different type of air. So, for me, when I learned about the 10 most effective feel good ice breaking question, guess what? Now I have it on my website. Off you go. You can use it.
Mhm.
And it's amazing how it actually works. The first question is, how did you ever get interested in the widget business?
Mm.
So you really have to be curious when you're asking that question. So when I was handed my first case in Bosnia, the gentleman was branded as a self-declared mayor of Mostar. So you can he had that persona, and like, how am I going to get that persona to like me?
Mhm.
So, well, I know the mechanics, as in I went to spy school in the UK to be a contact handler, spent a month there, and then I deployed. I'm like, okay, so we're supposed to say good morning in Sobrokroat, so Dobro Jutro, Yesim Jean-Jacques, Kakaste, as in they appreciate the effort of being able to communicate in their language. And then from there, you have to work with an interpreter. But the interpreter is not here. The interpreter is on the sides. But you still have to keep your eye on the contact, on the person of interest, and the interpreter at the end will disappear because you're just keeping your eye with them. And then so we're doing the exchange. So my first question to him was, I'm just curious. See, those three words, by the way, Chris, I'm just curious.
curious.
As soon as you say that to someone, their subconscious mind stays open. All the distraction of maybe people on the phone or whatnot goes away. I'm just curious. Oh, what are you curious about?
There you go.
First question, how did you ever get interested in politics? I just replaced the word widget. How did you ever? I'm just curious. How did you ever get interested in politics? Now, the research says that if you ask that question in the right time, the right moment, with the right person, they'll talk for 10 to 15 minutes nonstop.
Wow.
He did not follow that course because he talked for 30 to 40 minutes nonstop. He kept on going and going and going. And and he's providing me a lot of clues and cues for me to read his preferred communication style. So the model comes in play here of here's the 2 P's to decoding one's preferred communication style. I like simplifying things for application. So when I'm interacting with someone, regardless of their culture, regardless of where they're coming from, they all have a preference. We all have a preference. And science shows that a child's preference is already set at the age of 4 to 5. Are you more outgoing or are you more reserved? As in, do you prefer a fast pace or a slower pace? We have a preference. We can be 51% one side, 49% the other. It doesn't matter, but we do have a preference. So as he's communicating, I'm looking at the pace perspective. Is he talking to me rapidly, fast, or slowly, conservatively? Is he loud or is he soft-spoken? Where is he on that scale? That's the pace perspective. And then from the pace perspective, then you start looking at the priority perspective. Is he using more task-oriented words? Or is he using more feeling-oriented words? An example would be, if I was to ask you, Chris, what do you feel we should do after this presentation? Well, if you're from that people side, you would respond, well, I feel. But if you're not, it's hard to respond to that. If I was to say, well, what do you think we should do? Well, if you're not from that quadrant, it's like, well, I don't know. Now, if you say, well, so what do you think or feel we should do? What do you feel or think we should do? Thinking things through, feeling things through. They will respond, well, I think, ding, 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 I need to go more task with this individual. Well, I feel, ding, 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 ding. They would prefer more feeling. So it gives you they're giving you all the clues and cues of their preferred communication style. You cannot not communicate. And by having a model of reference in your répertoire, there's a French word of the day, you activate this little piece of the brain, behind your left ear, your RAS, your reticular activating system. Whatever you're looking for is looking for you. So if you're looking to discern their preferred communication style, just start observing the pace perspective and then the priority perspective. And then from there, you'll find that they'll fit into 4 main areas, 4 personas. So if they're a little bit more outgoing, right, in their ways and very task oriented, well, that persona will prefer you to communicate in a firm manner. So I'm going to give you the 4 legal F words.
The legal F words
in a firm manner. Can you just speak it out? That's very refreshing when you speak your mind. They speak in a firm manner. Others, they may be outgoing, but they're the life of the party. Guess what? They will want you to communicate in a fun manner. Smile a little bit, right? Enjoy yourself. Others, and when they're more reserved, and let's say reserved on the people side, well, that quadrant, they would prefer for you to communicate in a friendly manner. So check your tone and be friendly, and it's absolutely, and stay calm. And then if you're still reserved, yet you have a lot of questions, right? You're just curious, you got a lot of questions. Well, they will want you to communicate in a factual manner when connecting with people matters. So by discerning one's preferred communication style, know before you show. 4 key 4 words, know before you show. before you show that product, that service, that opportunity to your client, you need to know before you show what's their preferred communication style. Have a start point. Can you say the same thing in a firm, fun, friendly, or factual manner? So learning to say the same thing in 4 ways. I come from that persona that tends to be a little bit more direct. And when I was studying with Dr. Rome in Atlanta, oh my God, defining moment, September of 1999, still remember it. He said to me, JJ, got my attention, yeah? Let me show you how you can annoy 90% of the general population just by being yourself. What the fuck? How did you know that? Because that persona tends to be the smallest group of the general population.
Really?
My homies, yeah. The military attracts, the special forces attract a lot of those personas. But they're the smallest group of the general population, 10 to 15% plus or minus, give or take. And what was fascinating is I understood this, and what I heard is I'm leaving a lot of the money on the table. In business, I'm leaving a lot of money on the table because I'm doing pretty good, but I'm doing pretty good with my personas.
Yeah.
But what about the other
90%?
Then he said to me, JJ, would you be willing? I'm just curious. Would you be willing to learn to say the same thing in a different way? What do you mean the same thing? There's a different way? So I was ready, right? I was ready. We hear that famous saying. I've heard it before, but it resonated in me at that time. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Well, guess what? The teacher appeared in September of 1999 in Atlanta, Georgia.
Well, I love this data because, I've kind of tuned into when people use language where they say think or emotion. It helps me identify masculine and feminine. It helps me identify if they're in that emotional sort of brain wave or brain sphere, hemisphere, if you will, or if they're in that logic thing. But I love these four keys and how people have those personalities and how you can identify them. And all of it's really a lot of it's about gaining rapport, right? And developing a relationship, right?
That's the first thing that they kept on hammering in over and over and over in the UK. Rapport. Yeah. And then I'm like, rapport, is that 2 P's or 1 P in rapport? I'm like, what's rapport?
Is it French or
rapport? So it's very similar.
Yeah.
And they kept on advocating that a contact handler has to establish and maintain rapport with people. I'm like, okay, how do you do that? Well, you just have to establish rapport. I got it.
How do you do that?
How do you do that? Well, you just do it. What's the model of reference? How do you do that? So, because over there, it's an instructor teaching the lesson plan of the past instructor. Because they do a year or 2 years, and then they move, and they come back, take the lessons plan. And a few years before, I was back in the UK, and I was on an interrogator course. So prisoner handling and tactical questioning. I was on my interrogator course, and that was something because we didn't train that way in Canada. First of all I heard is, who wants to go to the UK? And I'm like, well, I want to go to the UK. And then they sent me to the UK for a 7-day course. I'm like, 7 days? As in, do we have weekend off? No, there's no weekend off. It starts on a Sunday and it finishes on a Sunday. I'm like, 7 days? Really? You don't that's really? Anyways. And in the first hour, Chris, I was taken, stripped naked, thrown into a cell, and interrogated.
It's Fridays
that
around
was
here.
Not on the curriculum. What does that say that I was going?
Yeah.
And the warrant officer, that was like he did what we call a harsh interrogation. 9 minutes nonstop of yelling.
Wow.
Is he ever going to breathe? Like he was ticked off or something. I mean, because I'm Canadian, I don't know. But when you don't have anything on you, everything is on play. Everything is vulnerable. So if you have any weird things going, tattoos or whatnot, guess what? It's coming out. And I never knew you could put so many swear words in sentences. So he goes up and down, and I'm just standing there because I know I'm supposed to say I cannot answer that question. even when I said I'm not, oh, I cannot answer that question, he already knew that I was going to say that, and he just chastised me even more. Okay, well, I'm not going to say that again. Anyways, I was flaring, and my fists were. I'm like, and then it's like, okay, get dressed, get back in the classroom. I'm like, what am I doing here? I'm like, I'm in over my head.
Some
I'm
people
like,
pay for that treatment, you know.
shock and awe. But as I was leaving, because we had 4 interrogations going at the same time, so all the doors open,
Hmm.
4 of us, the 4 of the part, we're coming out, and no one's looking at each other. We're just looking at the floor because we just got violated, and we're sitting in. I was student number 3, and then when everyone was finished, all the instructors lined up, and then he started like debriefing us, and it's okay, number 3. And he started going everything that he was able to capture, flabbergasted. How in the heck did
Really?
you know
Wow.
all this? Because I didn't answer any of his questions.
Uh-huh.
Not one question. Didn't answer one of them, but he knew exactly my triggers. He knew exactly what was going through my mind. And he
Wow.
attributed this to something called BSA, behavioral symptom analysis.
Hmm.
And I became a student. I was like, tell me more about that. But they couldn't tell me more about that because where did you take that resource, that information? Where does it come from? And when I was doing research, later on in my career, I went down to get certified in NLP, neuro linguistic programming,
Mhm.
125 hours, and in that program, that's where I saw behavioral symptom analysis.
Mm.
You cannot not communicate. It's being able to read people's physiology. I'm better at reading people's physiology because I have a model of reference. That D persona will project a certain way, but the S persona will also project a different way. But if they're lying, it shows it manifests itself differently. And if they're telling the truth, it manifests differently. As in, you could misread people because you don't have a model of reference. Someone that is shy could also look like someone is holding back on information.
Mm.
So the persona itself, as in having the model of reference, makes me better at utilizing NLP as a neurolinguistic programming. Makes me better at using all the other tools because I have that foundation, that
Mhm.
model of reference. Then I can put everything on top and understand that, okay, how does that apply from a D persona, an I persona, an S persona? There are 4 main personas, but combined together, you will have 41 different style blends.
Wow.
So when you're good at reading the one persona, now you can start blending because 80% general population will have at least 2 to 3 traits together. So
Mhm.
I'm a DC style blend, so more dominant and cautious. My wife, Julie, my business partner, she's an SCI style blend, and that's a supportive, cautious, inspiring style blend. I
Oh,
really have to listen. What's the issue? Is it an S issue? Is it a C issue? Is it an I issue? Oh crap, am I the issue? What's the issue? So,
you're
uh,
always the issue. So, yeah,
yes.
that's how it
Well,
works for
actually,
all that's how it works for all husbands.
I actually documented it. I put it on the website as a talk. I wanted to get back speaking after COVID and come up with a new subject. So I wrote the uh, how to successfully navigate hostile environments using the F word. So,
Ah.
so I
Now
put
does
it
that
on the
work
website.
when the wife says to you or the girlfriend says to you, like I get where, we need to talk? Does the F word, thing work
Well,
in that environment?
the story that I shared on the stage was that I had just finished 3 days of training with
Mhm.
the senior attaches. You're putting in 14, 16-hour days. And the last day, I specialize in the field of, or I've been training them on elicitation and how to counter elicit, as in how to avoid being elicited for information.
Oh.
So it was a fall evening. I'm at the house. I've used all my words. I don't know. The research will show that man will use anywhere from 5 to 8,000 words in their day, and women can use anywhere from 20 to 35,000 words in their day. So I used all mine twice that day.
Uh-huh.
I'm tapped out, but Julie hasn't had her opportunity to use all her words. So after supper, we're sitting down in the living room. We're having a cup of tea, and then she's just she's going at it, and then but she's not asking question, Chris. She's making a statement with a pitch, which is a form of elicitation.
Huh.
I just like, oh, it's raining. It's raining. It's raining? Just by that pitch, you're supposed to add your say. I can't believe she said that on the phone, right? And I'm just not buying in. I'm just there. And then she says to me, looks at me and says, "Why aren't you answering any of my questions?" And without thinking, I looked at her and I said, "I don't feel obligated in answering all your questions."
Oh, wow.
Now, as a recognized global authority in communication and relationship development, I read the change in her physiology.
Yeah.
And I thought by adding these 3 words, it would save my gluteus maximus.
Uh-huh.
I looked at her and I said, "At this time." I'm happy to talk about it a little bit later, but not right now. I'm tired. Right? So I don't feel obligated to answer all your questions at this time. And then she goes, "Obligated?" And then she stood up and she did the, when you put your
Yeah. You got a frying pan coming at you soon there, buddy.
Going something like that. "Obligated? You don't feel obligated?" And then she left the room, as in she went outside. So, and then I'm like, what do I do now? So it's such a, I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to put it on there. So on the website, if you go to the speaking, it's a 20-minute presentation. And then at the end, the audience gets a chance to vote. So from there, I'm now a 3-time award-winning speaker, as in that's the presentation that I did. And then I use that story as in I don't feel obligated. So I give guys hope, because then the guys can look at their wives, say, "I'm not as bad as JJ." So
yeah, there you go. There you go. You should teach courses for people in dating. I need that for dating and relationships and stuff, because it's rough now at 55, and a lot of the stuff out there is got a lot of emotional
it
damage.
just so happens we do.
Oh, do you? Okay.
In
I'm looking at your
Cancun.
website. You help coaches and consultants, law enforcement, direct selling, and sales. I love what you talked about with rapport. Jesus, it seems like that is such a lost art in sales nowadays. People
Yeah.
just go right for the close. They just want to, they want to skip the first, second, third base and go right to home base with you on closing you for a deal. I get that all the time on email and LinkedIn. It's like, "Hey, we're a manufacturing reseller, and do you want to buy from us?" And I'm like, did you even check my LinkedIn? Like, what made you think that I'm interested in the manufacturing? Like, what the fuck? You are so off the mark of
Yep.
qualifying me and gaining rapport, and they're just shotgunning it. You train corporations and government, enhanced investigative interviewing, which I love for jobs, because if you spend the time and money to hire right, it
Mhm.
saves you so much brain damage on the back end. And then
The
you've got some
rapport
events
ladder,
as well.
as in
Yeah.
the first book that I co-authored. Inside that book is my methodology in regards to how do you establish and maintain rapport. So I created the
Mhm.
rapport, and in every interaction that we will have with people, we will either complete or compete
Mm.
with that interaction.
Mhm.
Like two D's competing, who's going to be in charge. Two I's, who's competing, who's going to be the life of the party. So we either complete or compete. Now, being French, I was writing the words, and I'm like, did I spell this properly? Because it's the same letters, except one has the letter L in it. And then my brain went as in L. What's the L factor of completing an interaction? Until you can find a common link, common like, common love, no connection.
Mm.
You need to find that common link, that common like, that common love. It's so when you're looking at a ladder, you have to connect it to the ground, right? And solid foundation, and leaning on solid foundation, and it will require energy to go up that ladder. Well, guess what? And when it comes to establishing and maintaining rapport, it will require effort. There's also insights,
Mhm.
as the ability to see things others overlook in regards to connecting it to a solid foundation, leaning it on the solid foundation, and moving up. But there's 4 rungs on there. Now, if you are more on the task-oriented side of life,
Mhm.
before I can do business with you, I must first trust you.
Mm.
Now, if you're more on the people side of life, before I can do business with you, I must first like you.
Ah.
So one that needs trust first, based on proof. Trust is earned. But on the other side, relationship comes first.
Mm.
Once I like you, I will trust you with my personal information.
Ah.
On the trust side, once I trust you, I will see that you have value and I will want to build a relationship with you.
Mm.
It's more of a professional relationship. So trust and relationship comes in. So it just comes in at a different time, but at the end, rapport is the highest state of relatability. That's when they sign the contract. That's when they put on the Team USA jersey as an operative. So there's 4 rungs on that ladder for you to be able to move to that state. And it took me 2 years because I was there and I was just testing things out, so I
Mm-hmm.
can teach the other about how do you establish and maintain rapport. So it's listening, observing, and discerning and speaking. Listening, observing, discerning, and speaking. As in, you got to be listening to the other person first, listening for the clues and cues. They're
Uh-huh.
more outgoing, reserved, task, or people. Discerning which quadrant, right? You're like because you listened, and now you're able to observe their mannerisms, their physiology, and the words that they choose to use.
Mm-hmm.
Discerning, I'm sensing D, I, S, or C, and then speaking. Provide your pitch or provide the information that you want to provide. What's interesting here is I turn that into a behavioral based model because listening is an S attribute. They're the other professional listeners. The observing is a C attribute. They're the other professional observers.
Mm-hmm.
Discerning, that's the D attribute. Right? They don't have a problem making decisions, and it's like, oh. And then of course the I, speaking. Yeah, they're all about speaking. So you need all 4. That's sort of like the sequence in order for you to connect by design and not by chance, in order to establish and maintain rapport. So that's how you do the rapport ladder. So it's in that book is that chapter. And then I wrote another book, another chapter for another book that never did get published, but how to master rapport in the workplace. So rapport is so key, but you see how your message. I did not know how to build rapport
Mm-hmm.
because spy school didn't teach me. They just said you need to build rapport. How do you build rapport? They didn't have a model of reference. So from there, got it. Created my own, and now I'm able to teach it with others because, like law enforcement, witness protection, they use the 4 temperament model of human behavior in their witness protection
Mm-hmm.
because they want to change your persona so you're not easy to be found.
Ah,
Fantastic.
there you
So
go.
they have to introduce a model of reference so that they understand, so they don't resist it and then receive it. Like,
There
hey,
you go.
how
I'm
do you
going to do
establish?
that at the office. Try and make it so I don't be found. Note to self: buy some camouflage suits for the office. Well, JJ, it's been wonderful to have you on. Very insightful, and we could probably talk for hours. But for the most part, the data you have is just amazing. As I've been going through your website, give us your final pitch on the show. How people can get a hold of you, reach out to you, see if there's simpatico, gain rapport with you as well, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, definitely the number one place to go is to the retirespy.com
Mm-hmm.
landing page. I would scroll all the way down. Last week, we just put a complimentary program on mastering the art of interpersonal relationships, both in French and in English.
Mm-hmm.
So you can choose your language. It's already there. It's 4 easy lessons. And then the 5th lesson, there is something special that was going to come out if you finish the race. So, but you know what? For me, um, look at a model as a model reference because raising your kids, it will greatly help. It helped me raise my son and my daughter, and then celebrate 34 years of marriage with my lovely wife. So it makes a big difference because it's a force multiplier, multiplies your capabilities both in business and in your personal life. So start with theretirespy.com. And if you want to, there's a place where you can actually book a call with me, complimentary 30-minute call anywhere around the world. So that's your point of contact.
There
Just
you
to
go.
connect.
Well, thank you very much, JJ, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Deeply insightful and fun. And of course, a lot of the stuff you use is great for building relationships. For we have this on the show where people come on the show, and I have to usually try and hopefully get some instant rapport with them and get to know them. People I've never met. I do that when I go on planes or when I travel or
Mm.
just about anywhere I go. I'll do that in the elevator just to be a shithead. Because everyone's like, we have to stand and be quiet, and I'm like, oh, fuck that, I'm gonna mess with people. I'm a rebel that way, but I'm deeply interested in people, and that's why we do the show. I'm sick of me. I'm over me. I've been dealing with me for 15 years, or the audience has been dealing with me for 15 years. I've been dealing with me for 55. But I'm interested in people. I'm interested in their, why they choose their pathways, why they go down through life. There's no one perfect way to do life. I don't know, unless you're born into, I don't know, a billionaire family, but even then you're probably getting some issues. But there you go. So thank you very much, JJ, for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
There you go. There you go. And thanks, Monis, for tuning in. We couldn't do it without you either as well. Goodreads.com, Chris Voss, YouTube.com, Chris Voss. All billionaires, Pulitzer Prize winners, newsmakers, authors, CEOs we have on the show. Just some of the brilliantest minds. And you're just going to learn so much. 2 to 3 shows every weekday, every weekday, and 10-15 a week. I can't feel my legs anymore. There's so much content, people. Go listen to it all. Thanks for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. And we'll see you guys next time.